Every month sees the release of hundreds of new games into the market, but there are only a few titles a year that people actually get seriously hyped for. After about 3 years of development and planning, Striking Distance Studios' The Callisto Protocol will officially launch on December 2nd. A ton of material surrounding the game has already been released, and we here at Metasquad have also done our fair share of analysing, comparing and theorising. But despite all the content that's been released so far, there's still a pretty decent amount we don't know. In today's video we'll talk about the Callisto Protocol and what you can expect from the main storyline as well as what's coming in the future. Let's get to it. In the game you play Jacob Lee, an individual who has been incarcerated at Black Iron Prison on Callisto, the second largest moon of Jupiter, in the year 2320. It's pretty clear that Jacob crash landed on the moon and has been locked up for reasons we're not entirely sure of. However, as Danny Nakamura, a mysterious character at Black Iron Prison, remarks in one of the trailers, "I know who you are, I know what you did." While little is known about Danny, she appears to have some insight into Jacob's past transgressions as well as the events that transpired at Black Iron Prison. In the simple version, there was a massive outbreak of some unknown disease or virus, so the powers that be tried to contain it, and well, it didn't really work out. Now there are a bunch of undead mutants known as the Biophage roaming the hallways of Black Iron, and it's up to you to fight back and make it off the dead moon alive. So how best do you deal with the Biophage? As was the case with Dead Space, what you might consider Callisto's source material, you'll need to aim for the limbs. Tentacles. Okay, I mean limbs. But from the trailers, combat in Callisto seems more focused on well-timed melee and carefully placed ranged shots. In other words, there isn't a ton of ammo, so you'll need to pick your battles and know how to effectively deal with enemies. There's also the option to stealth kill certain monsters using a knife, but that's only if the ones you're attacking will actually go down in a single perfectly placed kill shot. From the size of some of the creatures we've seen in the trailers, I'm not sure they even have a neck for you to stab in the first place. As for the enemies themselves, there are a few types that we've already encountered in some of the trailers and gameplay videos. First and foremost are grunts, your typical zombie type biophage that are still mostly human and haven't undergone too much mutation yet. These guys aren't too bad if you have to go one-on-one with them, but if you get 3 or 4 together in a group, you may find yourself in a tight spot sooner than later. Then there are bloodworms, long elastic enemies that will hurl themselves at your neck from a distance in an attempt to gnaw off your head. Thankfully these enemies aren't too deadly, but you'll still want to get them off you as soon as possible. I also imagine that, when coupled with other enemies, bloodworms could be seriously bad news. Next up is the blind, a type of biophage that has become accustomed to living in the dark and therefore cannot see. Think of these guys as the sci-fi horror equivalent of the nurses from Silent Hill. Since vision isn't their thing, you can imagine that they use a keen sense of hearing to figure out where you are. When dealing with the blind, be really quiet and make sure you move real nice and slow. Failure to do so will almost certainly guarantee you a violent, bloody death. You'll also encounter rushers, a type of spidery biophage capable of scaling walls. As it so happens, they seem to have a penchant for attacking Jacob in darker, more isolated areas. These guys are super agile and fast, so you'll need to be especially careful when dealing with them. Since running doesn't seem like an option, you may just need to give them the beatdown of a lifetime. Then if you're a Dead Space fan, this next enemy will be very familiar to you. Exploders are kinda like suicide bombers. If you don't take them out at a far enough range, they'll explode right next to you and do a ton of damage, or more likely, tear you into little pieces in an instant. Exploders are easy to recognize since the painful pustules on their backs weigh them down and inhibit their movement. If you're smart, you can use exploders to take out other biophage, so in the right circumstances, these enemies may provide you with a much needed tactical advantage. One of the most brutal looking biophage is what's known as the Big Mouth. These guys look like conjoined prisoners that have a massive, twisted maw capable of ripping your face off in a single bite. Melee combat alone may not be enough to deal with these foes, so if you're low on health, it may be better to run for your life than risk being turned into a snack. What's also apparent in the Callisto Protocol is the presence of huge armored security bots. While they may not be biophage and even fight back against the infected, they definitely aren't friendly. If you happen to run into one of these automatons, you'll probably want to keep well away and out of range since they clearly pack some serious firepower which is capable of immediately killing you. It's also not really evident whether there are boss fights in the Callisto Protocol or not, but if the game is anything like Dead Space, I wouldn't be surprised if you do end up having to go head to head with some particularly potent biophage. Admittedly, this is just speculation, and details on this are pretty thin at the moment, but I guess we'll all find out in just a couple of days. And what does the Callisto Protocol hold for the future? Well, if you purchase the Season Pass, you'll get access to new skins, death animations, game modes, and additional story DLC. All of this according to the Callisto Protocol's Steam page. Basically, if you purchase the digital deluxe edition of the game, then you're entitled to enjoy all of these extras once they're available. The Callisto Protocol releases on December 2nd and will be available on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. What version of the game do you plan on buying? Or is your heart set on something else? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell so we can continue to serve up quality metaverse VR and gaming content to you on the regular. Later!